Hello there, and welcome to the Drax Files Book Club. It's Sunday, and I had some music for the folks on the stream by a group called Miasma and Miasma and the Headless Horses. Jesus Christ, I can't think of the correct name of this band. Hold on, this is ridiculous. Oh, the Carousel of the Headless Horses. That's what it is. The Carousel of the Headless Horses. Hello, Shyla and Daisy.
Hello, Drax. How are you?
Very good. Now, today is the book club, and I have a little surprise for you. You're getting a book,
Oh my gosh, my
and
own
you're
copy.
getting a book,
Yay!
and you're getting a book. And look underneath your chair because you're getting a book. So
This is now. Do these have the emblem of the Drax Book Club on them?
they should.
Drax Press. Yes.
Drax Press. It says Amazon
Drax Press.
Crossing. So today we're gonna talk about the Grey House a little bit, and we're also going to listen to the first chapter. It's about a 15-minute audio cut that I prepared. Thank you, Shyla, and we're gonna listen to it to get into it. The Grey House is a book by Russian-Armenian author Mariam Petrosyan, and this comes courtesy of Daisy, and I already talked a little bit about this with Daisy. What I really do want to do is I hope that people join us in maybe really tackling this. I mean, this is a massive book. It looks very little here in Sansar, but it's quite massive. It's really heavier. It is heavier than Infinite Jest.
And I think it's a 35 hours on the audio, which is how I listen to books.
Yep.
And I'll say it's packed. It's really packed, these first chapters, because I've had to re-listen to them several times to really get everything out of it. It's a great. I'm really enjoying it. I'm only into chapter 3, and I'm really enjoying it.
And
yeah, I've just started chapter 2, and it's I'm marking it a lot more now already.
Yeah, and hi Calvin. Hi Calvin. How are you?
Hi, Kelvin.
Calvin missed my.
Oh, there's the mic button. Hello.
Calvin missed
Hello.
my Oprah moment where I was throwing books like you're getting a book and you're getting a book and you're getting. This is the wall, Calvin. This is the wall that you're standing in front of. But you're welcome to look at that wall. It's a beautiful wall. It's probably the nicest wall. So
It's the best looking thing in here, I'll tell you that.
yeah. So
No, I'm the best looking thing in
So,
there.
guys, let's stick with the subject because this is fascinating. And Daisy and I talked a little bit about this. I'm on page 77 right now, and it is packed. There is a lot of characters in there. This is about some sort of a boarding school or some sort of an orphanage for disabled children. They're all under 18, and they have various disabilities. There are the wheelers. There are people with no arms, a lot of prosthetics. There is a really well written scene where a new boy comes in that is named Grasshopper, and he looks from the balcony, looks down, and he describes the kids as, I think, makeshift or put together somehow. I think that was just like a little paragraph that was really well written. Daisy, since you're to blame for us embarking on this gigantic adventure, how did you hear about this book? What do you think of it now? Because we had a little, I think we're very much aligned with our little snobbery in terms of like language and stuff.
Yeah.
And you had a
I,
little bit of issues maybe in the beginning of this book, or
um, well, yeah, not serious issues. I mean, it didn't really grab me in the, as some books do in the first chapter. I mean, I think that's partly because, well, there are, as you say, a lot of characters in it. So
the
it's
characters
difficult.
are kind of thrown at you,
Yeah, so it's
rapid.
difficult to sort of really get your head around all the different characters when there's a lot of characters at the beginning, and there was nothing really dramatic, sort of, and startling happening either. Although it was an interesting sort of atmosphere, as you say, and premise and all the rest of it.
I
There,
kind of I
there
wanted
was nothing at the beginning that really sort of said, "Oh wow, this is an amazing book." But I mean, that doesn't necessarily, mean that it won't turn into an amazing book. I mean, so some books start out, really dramatically, and the opposite happens. They sort of peter out a bit and turn out to not be my favourite books,
I I
whatever.
think
So
I
it's early
So if we
days,
ever
as I
get,
say.
hold on,
if we
let's
ever
try
want to
looking at
get
it. Yeah.
advertising from this book, we gotta cut that, edit that out,
Mm.
Drax. But
That's not my intention at all.
good,
I
good.
actually no, but this is interesting because I saw this cover, and Daisy knows this, and because she said, this is interesting, and then I looked at this cover, and I had this incredible visceral reaction to this cover and said, "This is something I want to read. This is so mysterious. This is going to be like opening worlds. This is creepy and mysterious." And
Well, describe the cover.
well, the cover is here. I'm holding it to the camera too. It's like almost like a tree stump, almost as if it was sculpted in Sansa by Silas Merlin,
Yes.
and with some sort of
Yeah.
Spanish style houses. They're a little bit dilapidated looking on top of this tree stump, and it's floating in the sky, and it's just so it's I mean we
And
do
it's dirty.
it's very dirty, and we know that the subject matter is that this is a house for disabled kids, and the tree stump, I guess, would represent this as a symbol, maybe, something that is not fully
Set apart
able-bodied.
from.
Yeah.
Set apart from. And I love the description they go into of this like grid work housing, these towers, and they're all
Yes.
grid work, and
Exactly.
then we get to the
Exactly.
gray house.
Exactly.
Like this is they almost paint this is what everybody does, and then there's this gray house nobody
Yeah.
really likes.
That's in the beginning, the very first sentence, the very first page is, and because we know it's a Russian author, and I have this, I grew up under, we're all roughly kind of the same age, roughly. So when I look at Russia, I think of the Soviet Union, and I think of sort of central planning houses and sort of these same looking houses. And that's how it's described. There are all these sort of projects. They're all white and so very, very industrial and planned, and many, many eyes are looking down at the gray house, and the gray house is down there, and it's sturdy and it's dilapidated and it's really old and comes from a different era. And that initial sort of scene setting was really cool. And then I could not shake. I once saw a documentary about an orphanage in Romania, which was the most, I have to track it down. It's the most horrific documentary I've seen in my lifetime. Complete neglect. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, it's a poor country to
Yeah,
begin
yeah.
with, and then these are the forgotten. Nobody cares about these kids, and it was just unbelievable. And then I, of course, was thinking when I was reading about the movie Freaks, Todd Browning thing in the 30s with these circus people, the bearded lady, the two, the human worm with no arms, and so all these images come up when I read the book. And a last word on this. Well, Calvin already disappeared. Calvin ran away fast. That's fine. Um,
No, I was just going someplace where the audio was better mix. It's too loud in the corner.
ah, he's hiding. I see. Okay, good. Makes sense. It doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense. No. But then my last word on this is that with Daisy, I have to say it goes in and out. But I realize I'm shooting myself in the foot if I'm too critical about language, let's say. And Daisy, you mentioned this too because it's a translation. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, when I compare this to what I was just reading here, Gary Steingart, high literary sort of fiction or infinite jest, there are flaws, that's for sure, in the prose, okay? And so I realized, like, if I want to enjoy this book because there are ideas in there and it's suspenseful and it's super creepy and the whole scene setting is just so, it's like, it's claustrophobic and it's like Silas actually looked at this book. He said it's too depressing. I can't do it. Um, I love that stuff. So, but now that when I get too wrapped up into minutia, and pedantry about language, I cheat myself out of enjoying it, right? Yeah.
Well, this book isn't depressing me thus far.
Yeah. I mean, depressing is I can understand when Silas says it. I can see when I like difficult mm, scenarios of hardship when it's depicted, and then people rise. I mean, Daisy and I have this discussion about is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, is that depressing or not? I find it awesome. I don't find it depressing at all. It depicts humanity at its worst, right? But it also depicts humanity at its best, and I feel like this book has that same vibe.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, I do. No, I think so.
Well,
I suspect it'll be. Well, I'm hoping it'll be sort of similar-ish to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
I think it's, and I've read a little bit ahead, but I think there's a lesson in this book about perception.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
About perception of human beings that are, or
well, I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but even in the first chapters, these mindsets that are already ingrained are being questioned and being thrown asunder.
Mm-hmm. And there is cruelty among the kids. There is a blind boy. His name is Blind. I was wondering, Shiloh, are you listening? Are you do you have to rewind and stuff? I mean, it's really dense. It's just I almost think like I need to sketch. Actually, yesterday I felt like I want to sketch these different characters. There's a kid. His name is Blind, and he is blind, and he's super white. And he has very long fingers, is how he's described. I mean, I think actually the description of some of these kids is quite really quite really catching me, really grabbing me. I mean, the new boy with no arms, then Smoker, who's kind of the hero in the begin, or one of the main characters in the beginning when he goes to this different group. They all sleep on this bed together, and they have to wheel them. They have to jump on the bed, and there's another kid in a wheelchair. He jumps. He's very fast. All these sort of physical descriptions are kind of powerful.
The visuals are amazing, but what I love about them is a lot of it is very natural, like the way it's written. It's very natural. There's nothing to say you should be shocked by this. The reader may be, but in the context, this is just normal.
Right. And that's actually, that leads me to Daisy. Daisy, let me ask you, because you are very critical in how this is depicted, and you've been also looking through manuscripts and as a part-time gig, looking at when
Yeah.
people really seeking you out to feedback, like, is the depiction of disability in this novel, is that okay, or how is that? What do you think so far of this book, like how
Well,
disabilities?
so far it's been pretty good. There was one part in the there was only really one part that stood out for me. It's slightly problematic in the opening chapter. I think there was a line or something somewhere about them all being pretty miserable and what have you, which I didn't care for that much. But generally, it was sort of saying that they're all in a terrible state. Although it didn't really specify in what way, I don't think. So it could have been, it didn't. I don't think it necessarily.
Well, maybe they're miserable because the house
because
and
of the conditions,
conditions of the house. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so I don't think it specified in what way they were all in a bad spot, sort of thing. Don't think it necessarily meant it's because they were simply disabled. But no, generally, it's as Charlotte says, it's pretty good. I haven't really had much to complain about. Unusually, for me, I think I think the descriptions of the kids are pretty good. As Charlotte says, they seem to come quite naturally, and it's not like it's a freak show, and people are being described I guess you could say overly described for the entertainment of the reader. They're just sort of described to the point that's sort of necessary.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They're not sort of like checking off like, okay, his legs are like this. Actually, what is actually kind of cool is that it sort of weaves in and out. Some kids are not described in their physicality, and then later it's just sort of thrown in there that he took off his prosthesis. That's why I was thinking like it would be cool to sketch it. I actually want to do that. I want to in my sketchbook maybe just draw them like I'm not really a good artist or anything, but like, just to keep track of them.
They sort of describe their hair colour and eye colour and things like that, and then go on to just happen to mention they haven't got any arms or something like that. So it's just another thing, like describing. It's sort of in that sense. It's just another feature.
And it's also through action. She weaves it in through little actions, like the new kid without arms. And there's one sentence where it says his ability to open the door with or he tried to impress the other kid through his ability to open the door with his feet. Something like that.
Some of these would make great avatars.
Yes. See, this is what oh my God, you're absolutely right. I mean, if we should reenact this partially. I mean, this is what I'm telling Silas if he gets over his depression from reading the first chapter. Maybe we can convince him to build a set, and then we can meet at the set, on this tree stump here, and then read out loud in the set in the house.
Yeah, that would be a cool,
really creepy house. Exactly.
Yeah,
with like leaves blowing and the wind going.
That would be fun for a lot of books.
Calvin, absolutely. This is something that I will mention with every new author that's coming in. Please do consider looking at it this way. I think that would be marvelous. You sit in the scene. You sit in, like when I just flew over to Ireland as a teenager, so I could get into Lord of the Rings, and it never worked. I was sitting there looking over the ocean, rolling hills, starting to read and go like, oh my God, this drags on and on. Let's go to the pub. As a teenager, no. So we're gonna listen to I grabbed some audio and we're gonna listen to the beginning, but Calvin, would you consider maybe picking this book up or joining us? And then we wanted to meet at the top of every week's book club. We would just sort of check in where we're at, and we can sort of agree on a chapter so that we don't get overwhelmed. I mean, we have various levels of speed reading.
Yeah, I apologize for being Johnny come lately. I only noticed the thing about the book club just this morning, so I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about the book. I haven't read word one. Well, I read the cover, so I guess that's more than word one.
That's pretty good. That's
But anyway,
3 words right there, plus the name. That's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. But I was curious to see what a book club thing would look like, feel like in VR.
Right.
So
Yeah, and actually this is something, Kelvin, this is the first time actually we talked about another book that we then only Daisy read it and people kind of dropped off. So what we're doing actually a different theme every week, and we just talk around this theme, and then we had poetry, and then Shyla reads us poetry, or we have different themes like what's your favorite fairy tale and such. And this is sort of the next experiment where we agree on a book, and then we'll see if we can all keep the similar schedule, so we can discuss the progress, or we can discuss what happened and what we think happened. And officially, we're starting today, and we're going to listen to the first 15 minutes of the audiobook, and then take it from there. And then yeah, I mean, you're welcome to join. The interesting thing is, one other quick thing is that this is Amazon Crossing, which is a subsidiary of Amazon Publishing. I have a problem with Amazon, with their way they pay workers and all that kind of lefty stuff.
Yeah.
It's been pointed out that a lot of people are very critical of Amazon. Actually, I stopped ordering from Amazon, and I have a local bookstore that I can pick it up at the store. I can order online. They have everything. But here's the interesting thing. This book on Amazon is $10, and at the local store it's 15. So I ordered it at the local store just to sort of support them. And a week later, they get back to me, say they can't ship it. It's gonna take them like 4 weeks or longer. They can't guarantee it. And then I go, oh crap. And then I go to Amazon. They go like, yeah, you want it tomorrow? You got it. So I just want to throw this out there. There's good and bad in the world. It's not that clear cut. It's great that Amazon is made this possible, because this was a super bestseller in Russia, in Russian, written in Russian, in 2009. And the author worked 15 years on this book, and only because of Amazon Crossing, which is their literary translation of it, where they finance, where they pay translators, is it possible that we have this book. So that's,
Right.
broadly speaking,
Yeah,
so
a
you're
good thing.
you're a capitalist of convenience.
Well, there is, I can still, I can,
Here we go.
Kelvin knows
It's
how to rail
Shyla.
me. No, no,
It's Shyla's fault. She was saying you're never going to get a sponsorship talking like that.
I'm not looking for a sponsorship. I'm perfectly fine with 27 cents or dollar donations, one at a time. No, no, you're making. I just want to make this point, Calvin. You're absolutely right. We live in a world where we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need to imagine a better world. We need to look at problems, but we also need to, we need to push. I mean, this is what politics is all about. There is no perfect representative. We the people need to push the representatives that we think are fairly close to where we think we should go, and we can change their mind. We have to push them.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like empty vessels in that way. And maybe we can push Amazon. Who knows?
True. And all of this stuff is a mixed bag. I mean, just this morning I was thinking about my own impact on the environment, and yet I still wanted a single serving packet of a condiment. It's it's
Well,
the extremes.
that is extreme, though. See, in Germany at least, you have to go with it at the McDonald's. You pay 30 cents for extra ketchup, and
It was at McDonald's, but see, I'm tall and have long arms, so I'm able to reach around and grab the mustard packets while they're not looking.
Oh, here's Ari Lynn. Ari Lynn, here
Hey, Ari Lynn.
you're getting a book. You're getting a book. You're getting a book. Okay, uh, folks, friends, let's assemble in front of the screen here, because I'm gonna throw up the audio, and we're gonna listen to the first 15 minutes.
He's gonna throw up, and we have to watch.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
Throw up the audio on the projector.
First he throws books at you, then he's going to throw a video at you.
So Ori, you missed the beginning of the discussion. Please do consider picking up the Grey House. We're gonna start today. Um, I guess discuss how we should do the progress in terms of what we feel comfortable reading per week, and then we're gonna start today.
And then we're gonna hand out grades.
Yeah, why not?
You mean they're going to be quizzes? Oh my gosh.
Quizzes, grades, recitations.
Recitations?
Oh.
Yes,
I'm only
parts
here
of
to
the
see
book
who's
sheet.
going to be most popular.
Daisy, I want to ask one quick thing before we look at it. And also, there is actually a blog, folks that read it. It's a wonderful blog. I'll paste it in a second, where they summarize the plot also and help a little bit with the characters. And what I will commit doing is actually I will sketch out these characters and sort of keep track of them, of their sort of character traits and how they look. And Daisy, I should
I wonder
say,
if someone sells trading cards.
oh yeah, hey, we can totally do trading cards in Sansar as we're embarking on this journey, reading this book. That now we're cooking,
Oh,
dude.
that'd be great.
That is a cool idea, and then we can really see. And I'm gonna convince Silas to make this experience, and then we really have something on our hands. Daisy, I should have mentioned here in the back is your book, Daisy Gator's Little Book of Remarkable Persons, and
Right.
I gotta hand it to you. I mean, the way you describe the scene on Europa, um, it's awesome. It's condensed. I mean, it's a short story vis-a-vis like a 700, 800 page book where she has time to kind of push this in and out. But I sometimes wished in the first 70 pages of the Grey House that it would have your density a little bit in terms of in terms of shaping the characters.
Well, the difference.
What do
of
you
course,
think?
is
I mean,
that
because you've done
my
this
story,
essentially.
Well, the big difference, obviously, with my story and the Grey House is that my story was like 4,000 words long or something.
Yeah.
And the Grey, so yeah, I didn't have the same luxury to, dawdle around.
You had to do it quickly.
Yeah, it all had to happen much quicker. But yeah, as I say, there didn't seem to be a great deal happening in the first chapter, but then it's a very long book, so
I don't know, but we're going,
take their time.
But we're going back and forth on what is happening. I mean, I have to say again, we're just starting today, so there's a bunch of people here, Disney and Ari and Calvin, who haven't read it. Only Shyla, Daisy, and I have delved into it. I actually think there is stuff happening. I mean, the guy Smoker, he's out of line. He has these sneakers that are colorful, and that gets him to the principal, to the boss, to the guy who runs the boarding school, and he gets into trouble. And so there's action, there's plot there.
Yeah, there is plot there. Yeah.
So,
there is.
Folks, I'm gonna put this up now. It's gonna start. This is the first 15 minutes of Mariam Petrosyan's The Grey House, and this is what we're going to be reading at the book club starting today. To be determined how many chapters or how many pages per week. Please make sure your sound, your experience audio is at least 50. That should be okay. In order to hear it, okay? So here it goes. Boom.
Brilliance Audio presents the unabridged recording of The Grey House by Mariam Petrosyan, translated by Yuri Machkazov, performed by Scott Merriman. Book 1, Smoker. The house sits on the outskirts of town. The neighborhood is called the Comb. The long buildings of the projects here are arranged in jagged rows, with empty cement squares between them, the intended playgrounds for the young combers. The teeth of the comb are white. They stare with many eyes, and they all look just the same. In places where they haven't sprouted yet, there are the fenced vacant lots. The piles of debris from the houses already knocked down, nesting grounds for rats and stray dogs, are much more appealing to the young combers than the empty spaces between the teeth. In the no man's land between the two worlds, that of the teeth and that of the dumps, is the house. They call it Gray House. It is old, closer in age to the dumps, the graveyards of its contemporaries. It stands alone, as the other houses shun it, and it doesn't look like a tooth, since it is not struggling upward. 3 stories high, facing the highway, it too has a backyard, a narrow rectangle cordoned off by chicken wire. It was white when built. It has since become gray, and yellowish from the other side toward the back. It is bristling with aerials, it is strewn with cables, it is raining down plaster and weeping from the cracks. Additions and sheds cling to it, along with dog houses and garbage bins, all in the back. The facade is bare and somber, just the way it is supposed to be. Nobody likes Gray House. No one would admit it openly, but the inhabitants of the Comb would rather not have it in their neighborhood. They would rather it didn't exist at all. Smoker. On certain advantages of training footwear. It all started with the red sneakers. I found them at the bottom of my bag. The personal possessions bag, that's what it was called. Only there was never anything in it with any touch of personality. 2 standard-issue towels, a bunch of handkerchiefs, and dirty laundry, same as everyone else. All bags, all towels, socks, briefs, all identical, so that nobody would feel slighted. It was an accident that I found them. I'd lost sight of them long ago, an old present from someone forgotten from the previous life. Bright red, wrapped in shiny plastic, the soles striped like a candy cane. I tore open the package, ran my fingers over the flaming laces, and quickly put on the shoes. My legs looked funny. I forgot they could look like that. They acquired this unfamiliar walking feel. That same day, after classes, Jin took me aside and said that he didn't approve of my behavior. He pointed at the sneakers and told me to take them off. I shouldn't have asked why, but I did. They attract attention, he said. This was normal for Jin in terms of explanation. So? I said, so let them. He didn't say anything. He adjusted the cord on his glasses and wheeled off. That night I received a note. Only 2 words. Footwear discussion. I was in trouble, and I knew it. Scraping the fuzz off my cheeks, I cut myself, and then broke the toothbrush glass. My reflection in the mirror looked completely terrified, but I wasn't really afraid. Well, I was, but at the same time I didn't care. I even left the sneakers on. The assembly was held in the classroom. Someone had written footwear discussion on the blackboard. 3-ring circus with clowns, except I wasn't laughing, because I was tired of these games and the oh-so-clever people who played them, and of the place itself. So tired that I almost forgot how to laugh. My place was at the board, so that everyone could see the subject of the discussion. Jin sat at the desk to my left, sucking on his pen. To my right, Kit loudly knocked a steel ball bearing around a plastic maze until he got the reproachful looks. "Who would like to contribute?" Jin said. Many would. Almost all of them. To start off, they called Gyps. The quicker to get rid of him, I guess. We learned that everyone who tried to attract attention to himself was an egotist, a bad person, capable of anything and full of himself, while at the same time completely empty inside. A jay in peacock's plumes. Gyps recited the fable of the jay. Then he recited the poem about the donkey that wound up in the lake and drowned because of its own stupidity. He also tried to sing something to the same effect, but no one was listening anymore. Gyps puffed his cheeks, started to cry, and stopped speaking. He was thanked, given a handkerchief, and shunted behind a textbook, and the floor was given to Ghoul. Ghoul was barely audible. He never lifted his gaze, as if reading something off the surface of the table, even though there wasn't anything there except the scratched veneer. His white bangs were falling over his eyes, and he was sticking it back up with his saliva-moistened finger, but as soon as he fixed the pale strand to his forehead, it crept back over his eyes. You needed nerves of steel to look at Ghoul for long, so I didn't look at him. My nerves were in tatters already. There was no need to fray them further. What is it to which the person in question is trying to draw attention? It would seem that it is just his footwear. However, this is not so. By means of his footwear, he is drawing attention to his legs. Therefore, he is advertising his handicap, putting it in everyone's face. Therefore, he is accentuating our common unfortunate condition without consulting us or soliciting our opinions. In a sense, he is mocking us all. He chewed on this for quite a while. The finger traveled up and down the bridge of his nose. His eyes were getting bloodshot. Everything he could say I knew by heart. Everything that was fit to be trotted out for the occasion. Every word emanating from Ghoul was just as colorless and desiccated as he was, as were his finger and the nail on that finger. Then it was Top's turn. Basically the same speech, and about as engaging. Then Straw, Sticks, and Bricks, the triplets, the little pigs. They would talk all at once, cutting each other off, and this I actually watched with great interest, because I had not expected them to take part in the discussion. I guess they didn't like the way I was watching them, or they got self-conscious, and that only made it worse. But they ripped into me the hardest of all. They dragged out my habit of folding page corners, even though I was not the only one reading books. The fact that I had not contributed my handkerchiefs to the communal pool, even though I was not the only one with a nose. That I occupied the shower for longer than was allowed, 28 minutes on average when the norm was 20. Bumped my wheels while driving, and wheels need care. And finally arrived at their main point, that I was a smoker. If you could call someone smoking one cigarette every 3 days a smoker. They asked me if I knew the extent of damage caused by nicotine to the well-being of others. Of course I knew. I not only knew, I could easily give a talk on the subject because over the last 6 months they'd stuffed me with enough booklets, articles, and pithy quotations on the dangers of smoking to comfortably feed a multitude. I was lectured on lung cancer, then separately on cancer in general, then on cardiovascular diseases, then on some additional horrible ailments, which was when I stopped listening. On topics like these, they could go on for hours. They would shudder, horrified, eyes lit up with excitement, like decrepit gossips discussing the latest murder or accident, drooling happily. Neat little boys in neat little shirts, so earnest and wholesome, but hidden underneath their faces were old hags, skin pitted with acid. This was not the first time I saw through to those wrinkled old crones, so it was not a surprise. They got to me so badly that I started dreaming of poisoning them with nicotine, all together and each one separately. Pity I couldn't do that. to smoke my paltry once every 3 days cigarette, I went to hide in the teacher's bathroom. Not even our own bathroom, God forbid. If I poisoned anyone or anything, it could only be the cockroaches, because only the cockroaches ever ventured there. The stoning had been going on for half an hour when Jin rapped his pen on the table and declared the footwear discussion closed. They'd just about forgotten the topic by that time, so the reminder turned out to be quite appropriate. They stared at the damned sneakers. They loathed them in silence, with dignity and with contempt for my childishness and tastelessness. 15 pairs of soft brown loafers against one fire-red pair of sneakers. The longer the stares continued, the brighter the shoes burned. Soon everything except them became gray and washed out. I was just admiring them when I was told it was my turn to speak. I don't know quite how it happened, but for the first time in my life, I said to the pheasants what I thought of them. I told them that this classroom and everything in it were not worth one pair of gorgeous sneakers like these. That's what I said to the pheasants, even to poor cowed Top, even to the little pigs, and I really felt it at that moment because I can't stand cowards and traitors, and that's exactly who they were, cowards and traitors. They must have thought they'd scared me so much that I'd gone crazy. Only Jin didn't look surprised. "So now we know what you actually think," he said. He wiped his glasses and pointed his finger at the sneakers. "This was not at all about those. This was about you." Kit was still waiting at the board, chalk in hand. But the discussion was over. I just sat there with my eyes closed until they all wheeled out, and I continued sitting like that long after they did. My tiredness was flowing out of me. I had done something out of the ordinary. I'd behaved like a normal person. I'd stopped conforming to others. And, however it all ended up, I knew I would never regret that. I looked up at the board. It was supposed to say footwear discussion. 1. Self-importance. 2. Drawing attention to collective disability. 3. Thumbing nose at collective. 4. Smoking. Kit had managed to make at least 2 mistakes in every word. He could not write for sour apples, but he was the only one who could stand, so he ended up at the board for every meeting. For the next 2 days, no one spoke to me. They all behaved like I did not exist. I had become a ghost. On the 3rd day of this silent treatment, Homer told me that the principal wanted to see me. The first's counselor looked more or less like the whole group would look were they not masquerading as teenagers for some reason. Like the hag sitting inside every one of them, waiting for the next funeral. Decay, gold teeth, and failing eyes. At least he wore it all out in the open.
I don't know, I like that.
Brilliance Audio presents the unabridged recording of the...
I think so.
Yay!
one reason, one reason that it's probably good is because there's more than one disabled person in it. I mean, in this case, there's lots of disabled people in it. Often the books are much more likely to be problematic when there's just sort of one disabled person and everyone else is able-bodied and sort of, looking at them and having, not so good opinions of them and what have you. Yeah, I mean, it gives when you've got more than one disabled person, I think it probably gives the disabled characters more chance to just talk to each other and interact as like ordinary people without any barrier, I think, between them, and just sort of, I don't know, it just makes it easier, I think, to write a novel. It just makes the book turn out better, I think, generally. It depends on obviously who's writing it and how much they know, but it's easier probably to write a book with more than one disabled character in, and get it right and make it to get it right anyway, I think.
Well, and don't forget, it's not necessarily a book full of disabled, like where everyone's disabled. We have been introduced to the honeycomb, right? That's what they called it, where all the non-disabled people live, and the disabled people are in this gray house that the honeycomb people don't really like. So I don't know where we're going.
Yeah.
We could be going to a conflict between this.
Yeah, we could be. It could be as you say, us and them situation, which would be, would be good, really, from a literary point of view. No, I'm not talking over you. No, I can't remember now what I was saying. Yeah.
I think whoever wrote the X-Men and the Xavier School for Mutants read this book first and turned it inside out. Like your avatar, very shiny.
The really funny thing is at my school, it's sort of like this. It was most of it, all the teacher classrooms and most of the houses and everything were modern and low-rise and concrete and, raised in sort of square, quadrangles and what have you. Lots of there were huge, long corridors, and in the winter, the wind used to howl down these corridors. These they were open to the air along one side, and you used to go down there, and it was really freezing cold. But anyway, so that was the majority of the school, all the classrooms and most of the buildings. But the heart of the school, two of the houses were housed in this great old ancient grey manor. That was, the most junior house of one of the other houses. But there were 4 houses in total at school, on top of all the classrooms and, swimming pool and all the rest of it. Library. So, part of the original part of the school was this great old, I'm not sure how old it was actually, sort of 17th, probably about 17th century. It was quite an old mansion. So in a way, it is very much like this, but with both parts of the, both the comb and the grey house all in one. Yeah, it's quite funny. Yeah. I'll see if I can put some...
Do you remember seeing that house, Drax? Yeah. I know this house because I used to live in a place called Bonnie Doon, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Yeah, so it was south of me, north of you, and it was. But if I went to Monterey, I saw this house.
I have a question. I won't lie, I had to run and deal with laundry, but I was listening. So did they say it was a 3-story house? Yes?
Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah. It's a 3-story. It's a 3-story
But there's
house.
only one kid in the class who can stand? Did
no,
they mention
one
how they
kid
do
in a group of pheasants.
Elevators, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to
elevators.
say, did they mention elevators? What, is this supposed to be an immediately modern situation?
No, I don't think it's modern. I think they're in an old
I got
house.
the impression it was quite old. So I don't know. I was just, suddenly the mobility, I was like, they need ramps or elevators or, yeah. Okay.
No.
Oh, that's a beautiful picture of it. Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Okay.
But
Right.
well, he's not the
I
only
think,
one that's not in a wheelchair. I don't think, but of the pheasants group, yes. And I think too, the normalcy of it. It need not be explained how they get to the top or the second or between the floors, because they've been doing that forever. And
Yeah,
so
well,
we
this
as the
is-
reader are curious, but I don't know that it needs to be part of the story.
You know
Yeah, I
what?
mean, my old school, it's been around since, I don't know, like 1900 or the First World War or something. It's been around quite a long while. And yeah, initially they didn't have any staff, or I'm sure they didn't have elevators or anything like that. And as I say, they were in this old house, I think, from the start. And I think the kids were generally slightly less disabled, but they basically had to sort of help each other, I think. You know, because
Right.
they just the more able-bodied kids were sort of helping the others, and I think they just had to make do, really.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I
as
was
best they
just
could.
curious.
And if that meant little crawling upstairs or whatever, that's probably what they had to do.
Well, it was just a little observation, and I think it kind of speaks to the detail the author's gone into with regards to the disabilities of the showers, how long they take to shower. I was thinking, I'm a girl in the modern age, and I take maybe 10 minutes to shower, but I'm also able-bodied. But they went into how long it took without describing that it took me a second. I'm like, that's a really long shower, before I realized that it was probably so much more effort. And I just like that little detail that was subtly tossed in. Yeah,
I thought that as well. It's very accurate. It takes a long while to, can take a long while. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the only, literally, I mean, I'm up to page 35 now, I think, or something like that. And that's the only part that stood out for me as not not quite right.
Well, and I'd like
Yeah.
to see the Russian. Because this is a
Yeah,
translation.
that's
I wonder
true.
if this is
It
a
could
translation
be.
issue, because it's not
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah, well, that's the way, yeah.
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 This footwear.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Well, and further along he says,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's adopted or not, but he says when he is being transferred. right? He says he's going to be transferred. He says he figures out all he has to do is there's only so many of these groups, right? And so he's thinking, I'll just transfer until there's no place for them to put me. They have to throw him out. That's what I think he's thinking. You know, I'll transfer until there's no place for them to put me, and then I'll be free. Yeah, smoker.
I think the character is actually making that same critique. Right.
I think Smoker's going to end up running the school in the end. He's the only wise one. He'll eventually be running the school, and everything will change, and they'll get to express themselves. And do not have sound. Oh, you just don't think much of that comment. Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen in this. Yes.
Game of Thrones style. It's like Russian Game of Thrones. Let's go. I really should. Hire me if you're listening. HBO.
That's what you need, Drax, an HBO special.
Well,
no, it'll be great.
I know the button. I know that button so well.
HBO show set in Sansar called Virtuoso, starring Drax. Done.
No, he doesn't want that.
Are you kidding me? You get to do exactly what you're doing now, only they pay you a buttload.
No, it's very different. Yeah, it's very different.
Plus, when you go to a restaurant, they won't accept your buttload money.
That's true. That's not an app yet?
Oh. I like this show. I don't want it to end. I think I actually have somewhere to go. Yeah, you can enjoy an evening, my friend.
I'll make you my dinner.
Yeah, what's for dinner? Strings?
Fish!
Fish!
It is as well, really.
You beat me to it, but that's what I was going to guess.
See, I like this. Sorry. I gotta get the book.
Okay.
It's free on Kindle.
Why don't we get through chapter 2 tomorrow?
Oh no, it's not free.
No, it's... Yeah, we'll get through House by next week. because they don't really count them as chapters, but it is 1 and 2. I mean, chapter 2 is house. But she doesn't number them, you're right. Same way. Smoker and then house.
Oh, I love the painting of the shoes.
Oh, it's a big audio file, but I believe you can skip to chapters and stuff. You should be on Audible. I don't know. Some books are different. Yeah.
I don't know what. Yeah.
She can't even concentrate. She's crazy right now. She's eating fish.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Well, I was thinking like a chapter a week, but as you say, I don't know.
Well, it's difficult with the chapters because it doesn't.
Yeah, and they're not very clear, are they?
Well, let's just read through house.
There's a bunch of houses.
Yeah, I don't know
The
which
first
house.
house.
Which house? I'm a bit confused, to be honest.
Let's read
Well,
the
what
first
is
house.
what is
Every
the end
chapter
page
seems
of
to
the
be
second
house.
house? What is the...
Second house is 47.
Let's read through 47.
You know, Charlotte, since you have the audio, I can also, I'll send you the last sentence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's actually more house. It goes very quickly between house, smoker, house, smoker.
I think Drax and I have got the same edition.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's other editions out there, so as long as, yeah, that's right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's a... I thought there might be a
Are we still
hardcover or
streaming?
something, but probably.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.